Hi there, I'm Martino, and in this video I'm going to relive my adventures in Marseille watching Le Classique and let you know if it's worth a visit for a footy trip. Let's do this. Planning the next footy trip is always an exciting prospect, and when one of your best pals moves to go and work for a top-level footy club, the decision is made much easier. Usually I'll see what fixtures work best with availability and flight times, but with Fran having access to tickets, it was more a case of checking when Marseille played their biggest game of the season against PSG and letting Fran know I was on my way. Also, a great bonus to return to France so soon after a truly wonderful experience at the Olympics in Paris a couple of months earlier. With Allez les Bleus still ringing in my ears, this time I was heading to the south of France. Awaiting confirmation of fixture timings, I was hoping for a few combinations, with nearby teams Montpellier and Nice also playing at home that weekend. Alas, I didn't get the dream combo, so just Le Classique for this trip. But flights to Nice on a Sunday morning meant I could play for the mighty TUFC on Saturday and head out on match day. After smooth flights and a Flixbus from Nice, there I was landing in the oldest city in France, founded in 600 BC as Massalia by Greek mariners. After catching up with Fran and dropping bags, we mooched on down towards the stadium. The atmosphere was buzzing outside, thousands of fans gathered and firecrackers going off all around. We joined the locals for a beer, a baguette and the local delicacy of pastis, an aniseed-flavoured aperitif originating from Marseille. Popular across France and apparently the world as well. Served up with water and ice, it could be seen on every table and was being enjoyed in various different quantities. Sorry to say that the beer helped wash away the taste rather than complementing it. Not something I'd be picking up as a souvenir. With the highest cumulative League One points total and the best supported in the country, we were about to see arguably the biggest team in French history in action. Initially founded in 1899 after 7 years as a sports club, Olympique de Marseille was formed. The Olympique was in homage to the city's creation by Greek settlers from Phoecia 25 centuries earlier. To this day, the fans are known as Les Phociens, as a nod to their origins. Droit au but, or straight to the goal, was the motto started by the rugby section of the club, but has also continued to this day and is synonymous with the Marseille badge. After coming to the fore through the 1920s, they won the last amateur title before winning the first of their 9 professional league titles in 1937. Only PSG with 12 and Saint-Étienne with 10 sit above them in the honours list. Club legend Gunnar Andersson banged in 194 goals through the 50s, but he was keeping them in the top flight rather than spearheading title challenges. To this day, he's still the club's all-time record goalscorer and will remain so for a very long time. His departure in 1958 led to relegation, with Marseille only returning to stability in the top flight some 8 years later. Ligue 1's success returned in 1971, catapulted by 44 goals from starman Josip Skoblar, a record for one season that not even Kylian Mbappe has been able to match. Another Le Trophée de Ligue 1 was added to the trophy cabinet the following year before 15 more years of ups and downs. Enter Bernard Tapie. In 1986, Tapie became president of the club. A man of many talents, a businessman, singer, actor, television host and politician. He saved Adidas from bankruptcy, formed a formidable Tour de France team winning 2 titles, and broke records for fastest crossing of the Atlantic Ocean. This was no ordinary man. He knew what he wanted and he knew how to get it, and his time at Marseille was to be no different. His dream was to make them the best club in Europe and dominate French football, by whatever means necessary. His arrival was nicely timed with PSG winning their first title in 1986, thus igniting this fledgling rivalry. He masterminded the purchase of a plethora of star players, future Ballon d'Or winner Jean-Pierre Papin, Chris Waddle, Abide Pele, Didier Deschamps, Desailly, Barthez, Degana, etc. I could go on. In 1989, Tapie reached his first milestone, triumphing in a narrow title race against their newfound Parisian rivals. Now it was time to dominate France and conquer Europe. Marseille continued their success and ended up winning a then record, let's say, 5 in a row. One of my first memories in life, let alone football, was family and friends gathered around the TV for the 1991 European Cup final, as Marseille were defeated on penalties by a terrific Red Star Belgrade team. But this wasn't going to stop Tapie & Co. He bought in the services of one of football's all-time greats in Franz Beckenbauer, and there's usually only one outcome when he's involved. In 1993, they finally achieved their crowning glory. A Basile Boli goal just before half-time was enough to hold off Fabio Capello's AC Milan and inaugurate Marseille as the first French European champions. And to this day, despite the best efforts of their northern rivals, the only European champions. Didier Deschamps became the youngest captain to win the title, setting the foundations for a career that would prove him to be one of the most accomplished leaders in football history. As touched on earlier, Tapia was not one who was willing to accept anything other than winning and was prepared to pull a few strings to make that happen. In the immediate aftermath of the final, it became clear that the players of Valenciennes, a small club by the Belgian border, had been bribed to take it easy on Marseille in their final league game just 6 days before the final. However, one player refused to take part. Jacques Glassman, who later won the FIFA Fair Play Award for his honesty, notified the referee and subsequently the relevant authorities. Once proven, Marseille was stripped of that 5th consecutive title, relegated to League Two, and later ended up filing for bankruptcy. Tapier's punishment was 6 months in jail after having a greater sentence reduced. Despite this being the only proven case of bribery, there are many other accusations that throw shade over their routes to the European finals and brings a dark cloud over their successes in that period. Rebuilding the club hasn't been easy and success hard to come by. Didier Drogba inspired one of their 2 Europa League runners-up spots, but his namesake Deschamps continued his love affair with the club and delivered the goods, returning as manager to lead Marseille to the 2010 league title, before taking on the national team job, where he's not done too badly either. But the trophy cabinet has been more or less unopened since then, taking us up to the present day. Les Olympiennes, with the 20th highest revenue in world football, make no mistake about it, are a huge club, and the fans expect huge things. In 2021, the Ultras made their feelings known by storming their training ground to stress their feelings towards the club's officials, leading to the next match being postponed, and the subsequent departure of manager André Villas-Boas. Thankfully, spirits were a little higher today, and with good reason. Marseille had splashed the cash in the summer. New recruits included Adrien Rabiot, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, and more controversially, Mason Greenwood. Banished from English football due to his off-field misdemeanours, this didn't seem to be an issue on the continent after a successful spell in Spain last season. A positive winning start to the season left them in 3rd place going into the evening's clash, with only South Coast neighbours Monaco sandwiched between the night's competitors. With enough pastis knocked back, we made our way into the Stade Vélodrome, a truly unique and iconic venue that has long been on my list of stadiums to visit. Second largest in France behind the Stade de France, the 67,000-seater stadium was opened in 1937 and has hosted games in 2 World Cups, 3 European Championships, 2 Rugby World Cups and the 2024 Olympics. A true icon of the footballing world that records the largest average attendance in the country and the 9th biggest in the world of football. The stadium name is an indication of the fact it originally hosted cycling as well as football, and a track was present in various guises until 1985 when the latest renovation removed it under the instruction of Tapier. Partway through explaining the grim story of Joey Barton, we turned the corner to see the Velodrome in all its beauty. Always a great sight when you first spot the ground in all its splendour. A unique stadium that really captures the imagination. Entry was smooth, and within minutes I had a beer in hand for a not outrageous €7. Always a pleasure to be able to bring the beer to the seat, and the proximity between that and the bar enhanced my mood even further. 40 minutes before kick-off, the Ultras were already in place and in full voice. As expected for such a big game, there was a huge tifo that raised slowly of the enduring image of former player and current advisor Fabrizio Ravanelli, nose to nose with Pierre Ducroix, in a previously notoriously intense meeting between the two sides back in 1997. The fans producing the banner are among the most famous, feared and admired in European football. The Commando Ultras 84 are the oldest fan group in France, closely followed by the South Winners. The 2 best-known groups congregate in the South Stand, and the remainder of the 7 official fan groups are situated in the North Stand, the Patrice de Paretti Stand. An era-defining club president? A historic player? Oh no, Patrice was a legendary fan who was front and centre of every display of passion from the fans, leading the way shirtless on every occasion with full-blown dedication and commitment to the cause. On an early visit to the Velodrome, inspired by AEK Athens' travelling fans, he vowed never to wear a shirt to a game again. The minus 12 degrees in Moscow was a test of his steel, but one he passed with flying colours as he stuck to his word. Tapier allowed him to join the celebrations for the Champions League victory and even lift the trophy in front of the fans. This symbol of dedication to the club sadly lost his life at the tender age of 28 due to a ruptured aneurysm. His legacy lives on and is admired and remembered by all involved with the club. Many are intimidated by the fans of Marseille, and understandably so. But behind the fierce front is a unity and love for the city and their people, incredibly diverse and multicultural. They are generally left-wing and anti-authoritarian. When the people of Marseille suffered during COVID, as with many football clubs, it It was the ultra group that rallied to support them where the government failed. With high levels of unemployment in the city, particularly amongst the youth, an evening at the Vélodrome offers 90 minutes of respite and togetherness in what can be a challenging place to live. Above all, one thing unites Marseille fans like nothing else: a hatred of their great northern rivals and tonight's visitors, Paris Saint-Germain. As Cristiano Cataldo, the president of another fan group, the Dodgers, put it nicely, it's a rivalry of mentality, of way of life, of culture, he says. We're the south, they're the north, they're the capital, we're the biggest city in France after Paris. It's like a team from Manchester or Liverpool against a team from London. The provinces against the capital. The provinces against the power. The bourgeois, high-class, image-conscious capital against the working-class nickname of the Mediterranean. The rivalry has cultural significance that goes beyond the football pitch. Traditional cosmopolitan wealth against industrial heartland. The only two French teams with European silverware after PSG's Cup Winners' Cup win in 1996. Marseille remain the only French winner of Europe's premier prize. As the oil money of Qatar has catapulted PSG to the pinnacle of French football, surpassing Marseille's Ligue 1 haul, that Champions League title honour becomes even more significant. À jamais le premier, forever first, is a phrase oft directed towards Les Parisiens. As with many great rivalries, emotions too often spill over, and the tragic death of a PSG fan in 2010 after ultra infighting means that sadly no away fans are in attendance for this fixture. PSG's domination of this duel is highlighted by 13 years without a home win for Marseille, and not even so much as a goal here since 2017. The home team are up against it. But you never know. What did this year's Le Classique have in store for us? Well, first off, deafening boos as the PSG keepers came out to warm up. If that was a taster for what was to come, then we were in for some treat. The din was amplified by the unique shape of the stadium, which only added to the fierce atmosphere. Could Marseille take the spoils and leave a three-way tie at the top of Ligue 1, or would PSG continue their dominance? By the time Van Halen was playing and the players were ready, the atmosphere was at fever pitch and we were ready for the biggest game in France. 6 minutes in, the space opened up for Nuno Mendes, who ran half the length of the pitch unchallenged. After a quick 1-2, his deflected cross fell to compatriot João Neves, who broke the deadlock and dampened the Marseille crowd. The home side struggled to get going as PSG dominated the ball whilst also pressing out of possession. When Geronimo Rulli drilled the ball up towards Amini Harit, his collision with Marquinhos barely justified a free kick. But, to the amazement and disgust of everyone in the stadium, the red card was brandished. The decision was so bad that we gave the familiar opinion of, he must have said something, but no. VAR backed up the awful decision and Marseille knew they were in for a long night. Time to dig deep, show some resilience, frustrate the champions and see if they can snatch a late equaliser and come out with pride and positivity. Or they could just double the deficit with a calamitous own goal. Leonardo Balerdi went for the latter and directed the ball past the hapless Rulli with not a PSG player in sight. 30 minutes in and the game I'd looked forward to for so long was dead and gone. The fans sung on, but the sting had gone out of their songs and it was about defiance rather than hope, as PSG knocked the ball around all evening. A real shame, but that's football for you. After Greenwood gave the ball away and then ambled back towards his own goal, he saw Bradley Barcola turn in Dembele's cross from a position he could have been in with a little bit of effort. This led to his half-time withdrawal. Not the man you want to line up alongside in a battle. Or at any point, to be honest. Not something the Marseille fans were concerned about, as they had cheered his name as loud as any when the pre-match lineups were read out. So, for the first time in history of this iconic fixture, PSG led 3-0 at half-time in the Vélodrome. A couple of gilt-edged misses in the second half spared further humiliation for Marseille, who battled valiantly, led by former PSG man Adrien Rabiot. The fans showed their displeasure at the final whistle, which seemed needlessly harsh given the circumstances of the red card. Mais c'est la vie. One surely for them to simply draw a line under and move forward. PSG remain unbeaten and those terrible records in Le Classique continue to make awful reading for Marseille followers. Still a long way to go, but it looks highly likely PSG could make it 4 in a row to match the official Marseille record under Tapie. As the dust settled, we headed for a couple of pricey beers before heading home. A 9 PM kickoff on a Sunday doesn't necessarily allow for too much post-match activity, which was just fine by us as we'd need plenty of energy the next day. Marseille is located beautifully on the French Riviera. Even in October, the temperatures during the day were at a pleasant 20 degrees. There are a multitude of day trips available from here, along the Côte d'Azur to high-class destinations such as Monaco, Saint-Tropez and Nice. Ideal for an extended footy trip if fixtures align. Saying that, do they have a bloody align? Close to home, there are boat trips out to the local islands, but my foray of choice was the short 30-minute scooter ride to Calanques National Park. Translated loosely as rocky inlets. One can hike down to the sea and relax in these tranquil spots before scrambling back across the coastline along some more challenging terrain, where some glorious views out to the Mediterranean to be had. An ideal way to catch up with an old friend. Our only regret was insufficient drinking water and time, meaning we couldn't hang around too much to admire the views, for fear of returning in darkness. One of those places you'd love a little man to pop out and sell you a fresh cold beer. Name your price, pal. But, alas, our mythical barman never arrived, and we returned home for a nightcap of Grimbergen and a game of chess. The city of Marseille itself isn't short of a thing or two to do either. I jumped on the M2 metro line in search of Basilique Notre Dame. I was surprised to see it was nowhere near Notre Dame du Mont station when I alighted. So I strolled about, whipped out my Football Weekends magazine and grabbed myself a pint. What a tranquil, trendy spot to chill out for a few hours. The cafes and bars were surrounded by graffiti-laden walls and art shops as the sun shone brightly on the Quartier des Créateurs. Nicely relaxed, but with places to be, I strolled down through the vibrant and bustling African quarter before arriving at the Old Port, the meeting point for my walking tour. One of the few memories of my brief trip to Marseille during the 2016 European Championships. Thankfully not the day the Russians came into town to beat the living daylights out of English fans, egged on by a few locals who had less than pleasant memories of English fans causing trouble during their visit to play Tunisia in France '98. La Vieux-Port has long been the entry to this important city, one that boomed during their cooperation with the Roman Empire before falling to ruin after centuries of invasions and epidemics. Repopulation revived the city from the 10th century onwards, and the region of Provence, including Marseille, joined the Kingdom of France in 1481. Marseille played a key part in political issues and enthusiastically supported the French Revolution. As they marched north to Paris, they sang the war song of the Rhine Army, which had been composed in Strasbourg in the late 18th century. The song, which thrilled the crowds along the route of the march, was renamed Le Marseillaise and became the national anthem of France in 1795. During the 19th century, Marseille became known as the port of the empire, and the city really began to develop, with many historic buildings being constructed, as well as the acceleration of their industrial production, becoming a major centre of employment and manufacturing. Leading from the front was the production of savon de Marseille, a soap-making tradition dating back to the 1400s. And although the industry has hugely declined, it's still something that can be found in all souvenir shops and retains its high-quality standard. During World War II, the city was occupied for 2 years until being liberated by the predominantly French contingent of the Allied forces. From the 1950s onwards, Marseille progressed further due to reparations from Germany and Italy as they began to rebuild their status. A huge influx of Algerians after their independence from France in 1962 continued a tradition of immigration. Italians and North Africans have long flocked to this city for obvious geographical reasons, but many have travelled from much further afar, including large communities of Vietnamese and Armenians. A true definition of a melting pot with cultures congregated here from all over the world. Back to the tour, and it took us through the famous Le Panier district, which admittedly underwhelmed me given my early afternoon jaunt in Notre Dame du Mont. The tour finished aside the spectacular Cathédrale La Major, the perfect setting with a glorious sunset in the background and a game of pétanque being played behind us, the most typical staple of outdoor life in Marseille. Next time I'm determined to get involved in a game. As the guide was rounding up the show, she gave recommendations to where to find the best bouillabaisse in the city. The traditional soup is a leading light in the thriving local cuisine, but given prices are rumoured to start at €55 a bowl, it was an offer I politely declined. She did, however, leave us with one parting nugget. According to Time magazine's recent article, Marseille is home to the #1 coolest neighbourhood in the whole world. Where else but Notre Dame du Mont? Of course, I told Fran to hop on his scooter and meet me there. As I wandered back through the city, I stopped for a beer or two by a bustling square full of families chatting away as the boys and girls honed their footy skills. A nice vibrant setting to pass the early evening. My final day in Marseille, and there was only one thing left on my to-do list: to get up to the actual Notre Dame Basilica. Again, the weather was perfect, sunny but breezy. This being the highest point of Marseille meant an inevitable steep climb. Not something I'd fancy in 30-degree plus summer heat. Once atop this great metropolis, it was clear why this was the jewel in the crown of a city attracting 5 million tourists a year. A stunning interior with panoramic views from the terraces. Stade Vélodrome one side, the yacht-filled old port the next, and the tranquility of the Mediterranean Sea on the other. Heading back down after my visit, I was lucky to take the exit I did. I was struck by one of those epic views where a football pitch is front and centre. Turns out I wasn't the only one with the same thought, as this was the exact same picture on the cover of Mondial magazine's issue 18. My finale in Marseille was a jog along the Kennedy Corniche, a promenade stretching 5 kilometres along the coastline, taking in the beautiful but rather busy Plage de Catalan and culminating with the Grande Rue de Marseille. A truly wonderful spot to run, relax, socialise, just another element to Marseille which won't necessarily put it in the most famous holiday destinations in the world, but will certainly ensure there is plenty of opportunity for a fabulous vacation. A people with huge pride in their city and culture, happy to be different from the rest of France. A city able to call two of the most enigmatic footballers of recent times their own, in Eric Cantona and Zinedine Zidane. A place that gives me a strong feeling to describe it as the Napoli of France. A one-club city with a distinct edge and mix of cultures brought about by generations of immigration. One, like Napoli, I would recommend to any fan to add to their list of potential destinations for a footy trip.
So, is Marseille worth the visit as a footy trip? As always, I'll rate Marseille as a footy trip out of 100 across 10 different categories. So, team ability, playing in the 5th best league in Europe, but not in European football. In a good moment of form, but still lacking that star quality to take them to the next level. 6.5 out of 10. Atmosphere, a city that lives and breathes football. The Ultras put on a great show from start to finish despite the disappointment of the events on the pitch. 8.5 out of 10. Stadium quality, one of the greats in Europe with a long and storied past. A huge stadium with unique, instantly recognisable features, and one that only enhances the atmosphere. 9 out of 10. Beer and food at the stadium. Beer that can be taken to your seat, and if you're lucky enough, only a 1-minute walk away. 8 out of 10. Tourism, a city with many stunning features, hugely underrated as a tourist destination. 8 out of 10. Accessibility, very affordable to get to and several alternative routes, but once there you pay the south of France prices, which can be eye-watering at times. 5 out of 10. People, a rough and ready reputation. No great interaction personally, but no issues either. Certainly an edge to the city and some areas that you do very well to steer clear of. 6 out of 10. Stadium surroundings, a 10-minute walk from a picturesque coastline and plenty of bars and bakeries for the pre- and post-match activities. 8.5 out of 10. History, well over 100 years old, one of the best in French history and the only French European champions. 8.5 out of 10. Ease and cost of ticket purchase. Free tickets from your mate is about as good as it gets, but a late check saw €100 would have been needed to get involved for this game. But I think they're a much cheaper face value, and although most games are sold out, I think it shouldn't be too hard to get one if planning ahead. 5 out of 10. So, in total, 73 out of 100. Overall, a class city to watch football and somewhere I'd certainly recommend visiting for a footy trip. For me, in terms of personal accomplishments on this trip, the first Ligue 1 game I've been to, but my 3rd French stadium. And I've now seen games at 19 of the 96 teams in the top 5 leagues. An absolute pleasure as always to travel around the world enjoying the delights on offer. Thanks again for joining me. Until the next footy trip, au revoir.